Hi, my name is Lala Mayera, and my pronouns are her and she.
My name is Asher. Everyone knows me as Ash. Last name is Brzezowski. I go by he, him.
I'm Mother Lamia, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Good evening. They are the words that any parent would want to hear about their daughter. She is such a remarkable little girl. For a girl named Jazz, the word remarkable doesn't begin to cover it. At just 11 years old, she has taken what most children and their families would regard as a terrible secret and brought it smashing into the open. She is the brave and beautiful new face of a child born in the wrong body.
She's got to love nobody.
Describe Jazz to us.
Vibrant, happy, full of life, self-confident, beautiful, glowing.
Feminine.
So feminine.
She wears pink cleats on the soccer field.
Do you like my new bra?
And padded bras. She not only dreams of mermaids, she swims like one. If you didn't know it, would you believe this 11-year-old girl was biologically a boy? Let's get this straight, Jazz. Are you a boy or a girl?
I am definitely a girl. Like, that's all I consider myself as. I'm sorry, I know I never do anything with my hair, but...
Jazz is transgender, a boy living as a girl.
I have a girl brain and a boy body.
Hi.
When we first met Jazz in 2007, she was only 6 years old and one of the youngest documented cases of an early transition from male to female.
We'll say things like, God made you special, because there aren't very many little girls out there that have a penis.
At age 5, her parents, Jeanette and Greg, made an extraordinary decision. They allowed Jazz to openly identify in the opposite gender because they and their doctor were convinced this was not a phase, but a condition now called gender dysphoria.
I always knew that I liked girly things and like feminine things. I like dresses and stuff like that since I was a child, but I didn't really know much about transgenders or, you know, people that, you know, transitioned or even cross-dressed. I just didn't know much about it until like I actually became of age and like, you know, got outside the house. My father was very overprotective of me, so I was very closed off to a lot of the world. But I would say like around like 18, when I got to be able to do my own thing, I was like, I like to do more feminine things than masculine things.
When I was about 7.5, I kind of felt, that's when I really kind of started feeling like not my gender and kind of trapped in my body. So I actually like went to my grandmother about it first, and she's like, if that's how you feel, like talk to your parents about it. So I did. And then I guess society and the fear of being rejected and like not accepted by my parents anymore and stuff kind of pushed me back into like, no, I'm not trans, I'm more lesbian than anything. And probably about 25, so like almost 10 years ago now, I started like feeling more like, no, I am trans. Like that's something that is really like, that's what I am. Like I just started noticing more things about myself and how I carried myself and how more older I got, more uncomfortable in my body I felt.
I would say throughout my entire life, especially in the early years, I always identified with both feminine and masculine energy. I was socialized as masculine, or socialized to be masculine. However, in my household, I wasn't reprimanded for having feminine traits. And so I was able to feel comfortable with my feminine side from a very young age. But actually taking the steps and realizing my gender identity, that was around 22 years of age. And I kind of like skipped over the drag queen phase and went straight from masculine to femme. And it happened pretty quickly. And it was a choice that I made by myself in a whim, but I knew that it was the right choice to make.
My aunt tells me, she raised me, she always say like, you know, you're my baby. I always knew, you know, since you were young, because I would steal her dresses and always get in trouble for like taking her, you know, her belongings and her possessions. And my mom always knew as well, even though she didn't raise me, but, you know, she would hear through other people, you know, why I was getting in trouble. And, but they already knew, so it wasn't a really hard concept for them to like wrap their minds around. My father was Muslim, you know, I was born Muslim, so he was always hard on me, you know, about that. Like, he was the hardest on me about that. But once I became of age, and I like was not really caring, and I broke out of his, you know, you know, and I began doing my own thing, you know, that's when the respect came, because I was popular for what I was doing for fashion and doing shows in the community, and I was a go-getter. So he was a very money driven man, so his respect really came when I went out on my own and did that, you know. It was a little difficult for some of my family at first, now that I actually think about it, like my great-grandmother, who was the matriarch of my mother's side of the family, but I had to threaten them, you know, like, you know, it's either you're gonna accept me for who I am or I'll never come back around. And I was like 18 saying this, you know, because I was wearing wigs and outlandish outfits and stuff, and they just had never seen it. But they love me so much, and I'm so blessed and thankful for the family that I have, because they were able to come around. Because I do have other people in my family that are gay, and that are, you know, trans as well. My oldest brother is a, you know, trans man. So this wasn't new to them, you know what I mean? On my mom's side of the family, that's like really like my only family that I have, you know? So I'll say that it wasn't, you know, too much. It wasn't too much. It was a little difficult, but in the end, you know, they're on my side.
It happened gradually as far as garnering their support and understanding. At the beginning, as I had stated, I always had feminine traits, and so operating in my sex assigned birth, I used to apply makeup, and so when I transitioned over, it was right around the time when RuPaul's Drag Race had came out and it was starting to be popular and make it into like the mainstream, so people outside the LGBT community started watching it. And so my parents and my uncle, of course my uncle is a part of the LGBT community, but my parents, they started to see, you know, drag queen stuff on TV. And also at this time I had entered into the ballroom scene, and I was a part of the house of, what was my first house? The House of St. Clair. And my mother helped me get ready for my first ball, and I took my sister to. And so I can say from a very, at the beginning, they somewhat had an idea like where it could go. And me being a very free-spirited child, a person that's gonna do what they want, I just hit the ground running. And so I just eased my way from push queen to drag queen to femme queen within a 6-month span. And I think my parents were taken, well, excuse me, I know they were taken back. My sister was very supportive at the beginning. She just loved the transformation at the beginning, whether it was perfect or not. She just was fascinated, you know, with the braveness of the situation, growing up in church and making that very hard right turn from what we were raised and what we knew to be right, was exciting for me, but also very confusing and exciting for my family as well.
My biological father, he's not really accepting of it. Like, he keeps trying to tell me, like, things that kind of like mess with my head, I guess. Like, you're playing a game, like, this is just, it's like a play you're in, you're playing a character and stuff like that. My grandma now, because I came out to her again, she's like, well, you've always been a boy. And my little brother's very accepting of it. He's like, kind of figured. And no one else, I guess, really knows. I'm just kind of telling them as I see them, and I kind of, for a few years now, stayed away from my family because of their, like, idealistics and stuff like that.
International Transgender Day of Visibility, a day dedicated to celebrating trans people, their contribution to our communities, and raising awareness of discrimination faced by so many trans people worldwide. Deke Wilson knows how that feels, and today he is graciously sharing his transition journey with all of us.
Hey, my name's Deke. Today was my first shot on T, about 5 hours old. And this is my voice.
Deke joins me now, along with his doctor, Shubham Gupta, the surgical director for LGBTQ+ and gender care at the University Hospital of Cleveland Medical Center. Very unique and one of the only places out there in the Midwest, by the way, with these kind of comprehensive services. We appreciate you, doctor. And Deke, thank you so much for joining us, sharing your journey with us today. You started hormone therapy in 2019. So how do you feel 3 years later?
I feel great. I've made a lot of progress since then, so it feels good. I am so much more comfortable in my skin. It's really hard to put words to, honestly.
Wow, just looking at you right now versus that clip we just saw, holy moly. I mean, you can definitely, you hear and see the transition. And since the transitioning, you returned to work, right, recently. Give us a sense of what that was like.
You know, it was really not like I ever left. I mean, my coworkers are all very supportive. They all have always treated me like I was there the whole time as myself. So it's really been great. I have definitely been one of the more, I would say, lucky people that has been able to find a community and surround myself with the right people.
You know, tell me how you enter that conversation. You say that so many of your workers have been very supportive, but probably not everybody understands what transitioning means. And I'm sure you've interacted with people who for the first time were interacting with someone who's trans. How do you even begin that conversation? Because you probably have walked into a room or been somewhere and you can see a reaction from somebody, right? Do you go right for it and just say, here's the deal? I mean, kind of take me through a situation where you can help others watching this be a little more sensitive and understanding.
You know, people always tend to have semi-inappropriate questions, but I try to keep in mind that they don't know better. So, you know, it's definitely a thin line to walk on. You know, I want to be open. I'm always open with everybody. So anytime anybody has questions, I try to answer as honestly as possible. You know, obviously I can't speak for the entire trans community, but I would just say if you are wanting to speak with someone who's trans or ask them questions, I would suggest maybe asking them if they're comfortable answering questions and you know, how far they would be willing to go to answer those questions or whatever the case may be. You know, some people are a little more sensitive about it, but like I said, I try to be as open as possible, an open book, welcoming, and I try my best to be a voice.
When one does transition, what are the steps that they take? You know, or more importantly, what was your steps into becoming Mother Lamia?
There's no roadmap to transitioning. There are 3 ways in which a person can choose to transition. You can do one of the 3, or you can do all 3. That's social, medical, and legal. And so I started off socially and quickly decided to change my name legally because I wanted to be able to assimilate in heterosexual society and be able to get a job. And, you know, even if people did look twice, my documentation, you know, represented the gender in which I was presenting. And so for me, that was a safety net. And then I did some medical stuff last. But you don't have to do any of that. You can just, you know, one day, I believe that people have the right to self-identify, whatever that looks like. And that's just, it's just not relegated to gender identity. You can be whatever you want to be, you know. And so that's what I did. At the very beginning, I changed my name first. I was really excited about that. Before I started any hormones, I was like, nope, you gotta get that name changed, girl, because you can't be looking like fish and you got a boy name that's not kind. So, so that was one of the first things I did. And then the social part came after. Feeling comfortable to get up and go to work. One of my first jobs as a woman of trans experience was a manager at McDonald's. And so, you know, fast food was always busy. And then so working in a fast food environment, always having to be in contact with the public, and then being a part of the ballroom community, I had to have confidence really early on in the game. And I was able to kind of find myself and find what aesthetic worked for me. So yeah.
Mentally, I started transitioning first and telling people like, hey, my pronouns are changing, this is my name now. And then probably like 2 months after that, I started on my testosterone. I've been doing that for about 10 months now. Name change hasn't happened yet, but it's easy. I'm working with Inner Own Voices and trying to get an appointment with that so I can start with my name change.
When it comes to hormone treatment, can you explain to people what exactly that is and how does that work?
Okay, I started with the gel, and that's what I'm currently doing now. It's just a small packet, you rub it on your skin, let it dry for like 45 minutes to an hour. When I first started taking it, it took my anxiety levels through the roof. It was really hard to manage my anxiety. I don't know if it was just because I was excited and nervous I'm finally starting this, or if it was a mix of that and the medication. But month of taking it, everything started to regulate again, and my emotions were easier to regulate. It's just like going through puberty when you're a kid. Your emotions are here, they're there. Sometimes you wake up angry, not. As far as physical, I started gaining more weight. It's a lot easier for me to gain muscle now. Facial hair started growing in, I would say 3 months into transitioning, so that came pretty quickly. Voice change is kind of hard for me to tell. People tell me it's different, but I can't really hear it yet, so I don't know, a little bit, yeah.
For me, it was a gradual process, literally. It was so gradual and natural. It was I never forced it, you know? So, for example, in the beginning, I started to dye my hair. I cut my hair off, ironically, but I started to play with my hair a little bit, and then I would kind of dress a little bit more feminine. Then I progressed, and I added more jewelry, more accessories. I became more flamboyant. Then I started dating in the scene out here, and I was introduced to other, members of the LGBTQ community, and it just gradually went on. So I met a friend who was also like me at the time, a feminine butch queen, and they also liked to wear wigs. So we decided to get a wig one day. And then, honestly, ever since I got my first Nikki wig, because it was like a black wig with Chinese bang, and it had blonde underneath. It was a synthetic wig, but I just loved it. I love how I felt, and that was, I graduated I graduated. That was right before I graduated, actually. Yes, actually that was before I graduated. And it was like a gradual process, you know, and being that I was already kind of like making money on my own and doing that, I got a lot of resources, and I, you know, just would bring it all home and play dress up, if you will, pretty much. And it just took a life of its own, you know. I was already a very feminine person. You know, I always get teased when I was younger. You know, people would say, why you talk like a girl, you act like a girl. I heard that like a million times. So it naturally fit. It was a gradual thing, and it was a natural process for me.
So you talked about, you know, getting resources and whatnot once you came out. Where were some of the places you were able to find resources for girls like you? And you know, how did you find support?
Well, at the time when I came out, I was very hands-on with community, whether it had been in high school. Like I was very hands-on with the fashion shows there. I was in theater. I was in the fashion course. I graduated to fashion president. And then when I graduated and I met other gays, I met my first gay mother, LaDawn. Yes, the mother Giovanna. They opened the doors to other programs and resources that I could get a hand on. I kind of forgot like the names of some of them because it's been a while, but the ones that were up and running, that they would hold meetings for like the younger, and I love that they was doing that with like a lot of the older legends in Albany, older queens. They would all host meetings and have like, you know, food and brochures, and they talked about the ballroom lifestyle, and they were teaching us stuff about hygiene. I remember like they used to hold some of the meetings, you know, like the SFQ building on Clinton. Next to it is like a hall. It's in the same building, but it's like a hall, and that's where like they would hold meetings, and me and Kimante, my best friend at the time, would go, and yeah. Mother LaDawn was like the gateway, honestly, to the resources and the things that I got my hands on.
What had been some challenges that you had faced, especially including within the LGBTQ community?
A challenge that I had to face, which is similar to so many other LGBT identified people, is the separation from family. Notice I didn't say loss, just a separation. For me, that was really hard, moving to New York by myself and having to now create or become a part of a chosen family was very tricky. I was young and naive, and entering into a world, I can say somewhat blind and vulnerable. I found it very challenging to make friends, and I found it challenging to trust people. And then it came a point in time that people was just dropping left and right, and so people weren't staying around long. And it kind of allowed me to seclude myself away and be isolated. And as I got older, I found out that that was kind of detrimental to my mental health. And I found myself in those times of isolation, I was battling with depression and anxiety all around because I didn't have a social outlet to be able to talk about my day-to-day experiences and or challenges and successes as being a woman with trans experience trying to navigate through the world. One of the main concerns was, am I going to be passable enough to be able to make it home at night unharmed? You know, is today going to be my last day? Is someone going to commit an act of violence against me because simply I'm going out into the world being who I am? And so I think that was one of the biggest challenges. Growing up in the LGBT community, not having a large support system.